they lease their vehicles to the drivers who are contractors.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of like Uber.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, do you recommend it?
No.
Okay.
It's crazy.
I'm here with a special guest, Marc Crawford. Marc is the Director of Transportation and NEMT Program Leader at Swan Insurance, which specializes in providing insurance to NEMT businesses. A unique thing about Marc and Swan is that they work with a lot of startup and new NEMT businesses that have as few as 1 to 2 vehicles. Marc has consistently been at the NEMTAC conferences for the past 4 years, very involved in the NEMT community all over the place. Marc, thanks so much for being with us. How you doing, man?
Hey, great to be here. I really appreciate the time. It's good to connect as always. Good to see you after a insightful trip down to NEMTAC and Jacksonville, Florida, in which we got to see Bambi's launch live, which was great to see. Appreciated seeing all my operators. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Marc, I'm going to let you give a quick background about yourself and how you got into the NEMT insurance game.
Sure. So I have been a commercial transportation broker for 16 years, all in transportation. And normally we do 2 types of transportation. One's for cargo and one's for people. So again, people transportation is what we call livery. I got into non-emergency medical transportation about 5 years ago. I saw there was a need for operators and finding them a solution for insurance. Insurance is very tricky in that it's state specific as well as contract specific. So I saw there was a real need in the market for operators, specifically newer operators that weren't able to find or be able to pay for commercial auto insurance that met the requirements for non-emergency. So we migrated into non-emergency medical transportation, and I built a program. Again, we are Swan Insurance, so it stands for Sleep Well at Night. So we want you to sleep well at night while we cover your insurance. And from this, we have built a book where we provide operators with the insurance coverage. We are now in 42 states. We have over 100 operators that we work with directly. And again, we have operators that started 3-4 years ago with one van, and now we're at 50, 60 units. We have others that are mom and pop that wanted 2 vehicles and have stayed with 2 vehicles and are very happy and are living the life they want to. So we want to work with operators, with TPs that are comfortable in what they're doing and supporting our seniors, our individuals with disability. There's such a high demand, and we are in the service industry. So we're here to support you, assist you, and educate you when it comes to insurance in the NEMT market.
So Marc, anyone who's in the NEMT world typically knows that insurance is one of the, if not the biggest cost to an NEMT business. And especially for NEMT businesses that are newer, starting out, it's kind of difficult to figure out like what are the factors to consider in choosing, to go after one insurance provider versus another. Like, can you just give us, at the outset, like a high level overview of what an NEMT business that's new to the game has to think about in figuring out how to get insurance?
Great question. So I'm going to start at a macro level, which is up here, which is that you're going to need 3 lines of insurance coverage to be compliant as a non-emergency medical transportation operator. Those are commercial auto, so that is a general liability policy, and the third is a professional liability. And actually that is called a SAM policy, or a sexual abuse and molestation, that was required by your ride broker or vendors. So with these 3 lines of coverage, you will be compliant not only in the state that you transact business, but also you will be able to obtain the ride vendor contract, which examples are Motive Care, Verida, MTM, Access to Care, etc., and or work with a medical group, which the simplest way to think of a medical group is you're working with a dialysis clinic specifically, or a operation for non-urgent care services. So they are all going to require similar levels of insurance, but those three levels, again, are commercial auto, general liability, and professional liability, which is called sexual abuse and molestation. So those are the three that you're going to need. Again, what we like to do is we like to take you to a program that has all three lines under one policy. So you're paying one payment, one monthly cost, and you can plan that into your budget. So you know what your fixed cost of insurance is. There are no variables. You're going to be compliant. And again, at the end of the day, it's making sure that you're able to get on the road and get as many rides as you want or you're able to obtain, and not have to be concerned with, you know, what your cost of insurance is, because it's structured, it's planned, and you know what that is for the policy period.
Okay. Thanks for that high level. So can you do this for me, Mark? Let's walk through a journey of a new NEMT business, right? They're just starting up. Maybe they haven't, you know, they're just getting their first vehicle in place. They're about to start doing trips. You know, when in the life cycle of starting the NEMT business do they reach out, get insurance, and, you know, what are the factors to consider, and what kind of, you know, you're saying like you package all three into one, like in that one package, even, you know, what are the things to consider in when I should get these, you know, what level of insurance I should get? Does that depend on where I am? Like, walk me through the journey.
Okay, that great question, and good for your new operators, because you're going to get a lot of information thrown at you, and it's good to be able to have a roadmap to get to completion so you can actually get on the road. So what I would say is, first and foremost, you're going to have a vehicle and you're going to have a driver. From there, you're looking at getting compliant within the state in which you are domiciled, in which you work. So your state limits are going to be through through the state. And those are going to vary. The difference between Florida, which requires 300,000, and Connecticut, that requires 1.5 million commercial auto, are very different. But you are not going to match your limits to the state. You're going to match them to the contract that you are focused on obtaining, or private pay limits. So we'll take a step back. You have your vehicles registered and licensed. You are going to be required to provide the state, the Department of Motor Vehicles, with your coverage. Normally, we need Form E in certain states, which shows that you have the limits of liability to transact livery, which all that means is that you're transporting people. So you need to make sure that your limits are in line with the state limits, but also that you are going to be able to match the contract. And let's say you're going after motive care, that you're going to need $1 million commercial auto limit, you're going to need a $1 million general liability, and you're going to need $500,000 in SAM coverage. So what we do is we make sure that it meets both the state and the ride vendor contracts. Now, you normally have about a 2-week period to do this. So what I say is, once you have your vehicles registered, you know, you've got your LLC set up, and you have your vehicle, you have your drivers, you understand that you're going after, and you've submitted the primary paperwork for ride vendor contracts. Let's say you're going after motive care, you're going after MTM or Verida, you've submitted. They're going to come back. You've got your approval with the state. At that point, you're going to have the insurance bound. And then you've got about a 2-week period in which you can get the first contract. Again, you want to make sure you also have a good partnership with routing software, that you have someone like Bambi in place for you to make sure that you can manage these rides. So there are a lot of moving parts. We normally sit down with our operators and make sure that they are aware of each point, each base, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and that we can get you there in the right timeline, because we have to work off the timeline of the ride vendor contract. And we have to make sure that you have everything in place to be able to pick up the rides once that contract's inked.
Okay. Thank you. That's
a lot of information.
You know how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Mark, now I want you to tell me how people do it the wrong way. So like, there's a lot of NEMT businesses out there that I'm sure you've come across where you're like, man, like I see these mistakes made all the time. Like, what are those mistakes What do people need to do to avoid them?
Great question. And I think you could probably learn more from the mistakes and the people that follow the roadmap, because it's what not to do, which is going to get you in trouble and really push back your ability to work in the industry and make money. And at the end of the day, it's getting enough rides, getting the right rides, and generating revenue from those rides on a repeated basis. So what you don't want to do, you don't want to go and you don't have to come and work with us. I mean, I like that we are a specialized brokerage and we have a program for NEMT, but you don't have to come work with us. Problem is if you go with another broker that doesn't understand NEMT, you're going to spend weeks, if not months, getting placed with the wrong insurance. It's not going to be compliant with the state or with the contract that you're going after for the ride vendor. And then you're going to end up having to come back to us and we're going to have to fix it. So rather than you go through the process of making a mistake, or a broker that doesn't really understand that you need loading and unloading, and they give you a policy that excludes that, the contract will look at that and say, this is excluded, you're declined, you can't get the ride. So those are mistakes. That is an insurance mistake. Oftentimes people wait too long to submit for their insurance. So I'm going after ride broker. They open the window and say, we have this requirement that you have to have insurance. Well, then you start looking for insurance. It's not a quick process. I will say our program takes minimum 7 to 10 business days from when you get me all the information to get this submitted and approved. As a new venture, again, we have a lot of flexibility, but I need to know what's your bio, what's your background? Do you have health service experience? Do you have transportation experience? So things that are important for us to know. Another pitfall is not planning for drivers. You know, you may think, okay, it's just going to be myself, my husband, my wife, and then you put 2 vehicles on and you need another driver. Well, you haven't done any of the pre-work, you haven't done background, you haven't run NVR. So things of that nature. You do not want to get into a position where you have vehicles, you have potential rides coming through, but you don't have drivers. So things to think about, and I've seen them all. I've seen people that put 4 vehicles on, have no drivers, have the wrong insurance. They haven't gone to a professional. So in this business, not like auto insurance where you can just go out and, you know, your local agent on the corner can write it. You need to be very careful that you go with a specialist that knows what they're doing, not only because it will protect, you know, or allow you to get the contract, it protects you as the owner from liability. You know, you're handling a very precious cargo, probably the most precious cargo, and that's our seniors. That's what I think of my grandmother going from her house to her doctor's appointment. So people hold you at a higher standard. So make sure that you work with professionals, you partner with professionals in this business so you can become a professional.
Well said.
Thank you.
I like that line.
You can borrow that bad boy.
I will.
Right on.
It's story time, Mark. Tell me a story of a new NEMT business, maybe 1-2 vehicles that you've worked with, where things may have gone the wrong way, but they were righted. Okay.
Good opportunity to have, and we'll omit the name, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind if we said it. They're out of LA, actually out of Orange County. They came in, had a good transportation background. They put on vehicles, and what they wanted was both ambulatory and non-ambulatory, meaning that, you know, they were fine with people that had full mobility, but they also wanted wheelchair and gurney. Well, they put the vehicles on without the sufficient training. So they were able to put the vehicles on, but they had drivers pull up and they gave assistance to the wheelchair, you know, off the curb, and then had no awareness of how to procure that individual in the van. So I had a call from one of the owners saying, hey, we've got drivers. They went through basic training. So they were transportation specialists, but they didn't have wheelchair procurement. Well, that's huge in this business because you need to understand how to secure someone in a wheelchair. I'm glad they called me. we walked them through it, and then I went through the next day and we did a full training for all their drivers, even those that were just doing able-bodied individuals that could walk, to their wheelchairs, and then they've gone on to gurney. So that was something that they missed in that process, because they were assuming that because they had a lift or a ramp, that it was the same as helping somebody that was on a walker or on a stick, where it's completely different in how you secure someone in a wheelchair. That is, these guys are good. They're quick learners, and they understood that there was a deficiency in their operation. So we corrected that quickly. The ride went smoothly, and now they're fully compliant. All their guys know how to secure wheelchairs. So, and they've put on 6 new units. So they're now just under 10 units strong and continuing to grow.
Everybody loves an underdog story.
There we go.
Kind of like Bambi the deer.
There we go. Yep. Run,
So
Bambi,
this is
run.
actually a good segue, Mark, to the patch that's on your arm right now. We were just talking about this earlier, but can you tell everyone what that is and why you're wearing it?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So this is for the certified transport specialist. I recommend that all operators go through a course in which they become aware of what's really required, both on ambulatory and non-ambulatory, in the NEMT space. Meaning, again, you're assisting people that are fully mobile, they can walk on their own, ambulatory, and or those that are in a wheelchair. I say on a stick, which just means using a walking stick, or on a walker. And this is a good opportunity for you to really understand not only on what's the difference of being a transportation specialist with someone that has limited ability, capacity to move, limited cognition. All these things are covered under the transportation specialist portal training. And then there's also wheelchair securement, which is another good module to go through. These are both offered through NEMTAC, which is an option that you can go. You can send your drivers, but strongly recommend that you go through a training program so you're aware of really how to support seniors in transportation, or Americans with disability with transportation. So, yep, I wear this proudly, and I recommend that all the drivers do as well. It'll take you a couple days on the course, but then you can wear this. You also get a decal that you can put in your vehicles, so it shows that those drivers that are driving those vehicles are compliant. So it's a little bit of another layer of protection for individuals, or let's say the kids of parents that are traveling. They like to see the sticker knowing that your drivers are compliant. So something to think about if you're a new operator. Always good to be aware and stay current on how to handle and transport seniors and anyone that has disability that needs transportation.
Wearing it proudly.
There we go.
Thanks for sharing.
Always.
One thing I want to touch on, so the actual dollar amounts, right? When you're thinking about, okay, I'm starting this business, I have my costs, here's what I project my revenue to be. A lot of people don't have even a rough sense of what the dollar costs actually are. And I know it's hard to give exact numbers. There's a lot of factors that weigh into it. But would you be able to share, when people are starting out, one vehicle, what cost numbers are they actually looking at?
That's a good question. And what I advise a new operator to do is almost do a P&L. But I have a simple, one pager that I can send out that you can look at and say, okay, what's my fixed cost and what are my variable costs? And you look at things like, okay, if I have a vehicle, let's say I have a Honda Odyssey, ramped Odyssey, what's my monthly on that? and then cycle everything down. As you said earlier in our conversation, one of your largest fixed expenses is insurance. So that is a line item, but that's a fixed expense. If you have that one vehicle, the Honda Odyssey, you have the one driver at that time, oftentimes if you're a new venture, it's just you driving. So again, you want to pay yourself. But beyond that, there's about 6 fixed expenses that you can look to come out of pocket. Your front end expenses, like your certification, getting you through the DMV, your registration, things of that are going to be a one-off cost. But really what you need to look at is the controlled expenses, like your cost of insurance, the lease on that vehicle, if you're going to hire staff, what software packages you're using, how do I control those? I like to manage expenses and know what the fixed cost is. So stay away from variable costs as much as possible. On this, I would say it varies greatly. So, the cost of an operator to run in Southern California is going to be very different than in, Central Tennessee, for example. But that being said, you should plan, let's say if you're a one-off operator, you should probably plan for the insurance expense, to be $800 to $1,000 a month on all lines of coverage if you are getting a tier ride vendor contract. That's an average across all states, but it's a gauge to start with if you're just looking at insurance. But beyond that, there are a lot of variables that go into that, depending on, do you have a marketing budget? Oftentimes it's just word of mouth when you start. I can't put enough weight into talking about your business. Even something as simple and as cheap as wrapping your vehicle. Brand. A lot of people are visual. They're going to see your company. You can start with 1 or 2 dialysis patients if you're doing private pay. Those dialysis visits are normally scheduled 3 months in advance. So what your revenue is going to be for the following 3 months on each one of those patients. So it's a calculable revenue stream for you, because one thing I want to make sure and people are aware of is from the vendor contract, you are, for no better word, at their mercy a little bit. So you are dependent on them sending you rides. You might have high volume weeks, you might have low volume weeks. So you want to manage that out. If you can have a mix of ride broker rides and private pay, then that you can manage that a lot better. But again, after the initial, I'd say $3,000 on the startup cost, then you can manage those on a monthly basis and control your expenses. And again, I'm happy to share. We have a very simple one-pager to calculate your initial costs and then your operating costs for your first year. It makes certain assumptions, but it can be beneficial for someone just thinking, if I want to get in this business, hey, what's it really going to cost me? So I hope that answered the question. I'm making a lot of assumptions because it's very different depending where you are in the U.S.
Yeah, I know. But no, thanks for making the assumptions and giving us a rough estimate.
Yeah, rough estimate. Yeah.
For everyone watching, I'm putting Marc's contact info in the description of this video. Swan Insurance. Marc, you've dropped a lot of gems over this talk. Is there any sort of one final, large, or even niche takeaway that you want to leave the viewers with?
I think for a new operator, we can simplify your process, and there's a huge opportunity. We project about 63% growth in this market in the next 5 years. So what that is we're not looking at 5-10% growth. We are looking at a massive increase in the demand for rides. So I want these operators. I want new operators. There's enough opportunity here. It's just do it the right way. put in the time, make it your business, and make it something you really want to do. And if you're happy, if you like transportation, if you like elder care, healthcare, and you can blend those together, I think it's a great opportunity for a business. So I'm very bullish on the NEMT industry, and I think there's going to be a significant upside. I just want to make sure you partner with the right people, and they support you and assist you in a successful journey.
Right on, Marc.
Run, Bambi, run. Right on, my man.